Good morning. Good to see everyone this morning. Appreciate y'all coming to Sunday school. Looks like we had a revival. Must have broke out at the assisted living home over there, because most of the folks hadn't showed up yet from over there, so must have broke out in a big revival at the assisted living home. So appreciate the Lord giving us a good camp meeting. I think it was really good. Had some good preaching. That was a blessing to see Brother Wayne, Miss Anita there. Y'all showed up every night, didn't you, Brother Wayne? That was a blessing, and we even had a valet service for Brother Wayne, and like he could pull up under the awning. Yes, sir. One night, you know why it only happened one night? Because I told everyone you were a poor tipper, because I brought your keys back and held my hand out, and you said, don't quit your day job, and I said, okay. And so I told everyone you were a poor tipper, so they said, well, fine, he can park his own car then. But yes, sir. Yeah, he had all kinds of tips for me, just no monetary tips. And but that's okay, because they had some change in the what used to be the ashtray. They had some change right there, and I just helped myself to it, because I figured he was going to be a poor tipper. So anyway, all right. Well, like I said, good to see everyone again. It's always a little different coming back from camp meeting. I was telling the brother back there that it's so much easier now than what it used to be back when we first started coming here. Camp meeting, we actually took the soundboard from upstairs and took it to camp meeting, and we had a bunch of handheld mics and and our lapel mics, and we just took everything from upstairs. Everything went over there, got set up, and then after camp meeting, everything had to come back over here. And so I would generally spend all of Sunday school the day after camp meeting, putting the soundboard back together, putting the microphones back together, putting everything back together, and it was an adventure. And so I'm very thankful that now the church and the camp, they each have their own board, and they have most everything is at the camp, and we just take the two lapel mics and a few other odds and ends. And so there's nowhere near the amount of putting back together that we have to do like before, and that is a blessing. And so if you have your Bible, turn to 1 Kings chapter number 12. 1 Kings chapter number 12, and we will look at this. Last week we were looking in chapter number 11, and we looked at how that, number one, how that God told Solomon that he was going to take his kingdom not fully away, but he was going to take away most of his kingdom, but he was not going to take it away from him. He was going to take it away from his son. And so he tells Solomon, it's your fault that this is happening, but I'm not going to take it away from you. I'm going to take it away from your son. And so God sends the prophet Ahijah. He sends the prophet Ahijah to Jeroboam, and again he's got that new garment on, and he tears that new garment in pieces, and he's got 12 pieces, and he gives him 10 pieces. And tells him that that he's going to, like when God rends the kingdom from Solomon's son, he's going to take over and have 10 pieces. So Solomon hears about it, and Solomon says, "Well, fine, I'll fix this. I'll just kill him. This is not a big deal. I'll just kill Jeroboam, and it'll all be over with." And so I want us to see something in I know I said chapter 12, but I want us to see something in verse number 40. It says, "Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam. And Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt unto Shishak, king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon." So I read that verse right there because I want us to think about it. We're going to see it here in a few minutes with what Jeroboam decides to do. But I want us to think about, I don't want to say never, because I know that Joseph and Mary took Jesus into Egypt, but very rarely We understand in like typology, Egypt is a type of the world, but very rarely does someone ever go down into Egypt that either something bad doesn't happen to them while they're in Egypt, or when they come out of Egypt, they bring Egypt with them as they come out of Egypt. And so we're actually going to see that with Jeroboam here, but very rarely. I tried to think of some times. Obviously, we know that Joseph went down to Egypt, and God meant for Joseph to be in Egypt, and God set it up that way, and so we know that story. But very rarely does anyone come back out of Egypt with that they don't have Egypt still all over them. And so you get to chapter number 12. So you get to chapter number 12, and I'll just read down a little bit, and we'll kind of work our way through. It says, "And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass, when Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee." Now, I'm kind of torn here, because I know that Ahijah's already told Jeroboam, hey, you're going to be king, and you're going to take 10 tribes with you. And so I'm a little curious as to whether this was a legitimate offer. Was this a real offer? Was Jeroboam and these 10 tribes of Israel, was it a legitimate offer? Or was it an offer because they expected Rehoboam to refuse it? And so they expected him to refuse it, and so what would they have done had he said, "Sure, I'm going to make it lighter. Sure, I'm going to make your load lighter. I'm going to ask you to work less. I'm going to tax you less. I'm going to ask you for less." I'm curious what they would have done. But they come to him and they said that in verse number 5, "And he said unto them, Depart ye for 3 days." Now, I'm going to say, when you read the commentaries about Rehoboam, they are not kind to Rehoboam. They talk about Solomon and all his wisdom, and they are not kind to Rehoboam at all. I forget who I was reading, but one of them basically called Rehoboam a fool, and so they are not kind to Rehoboam. But what he does right here was actually pretty intelligent. He said, "Depart from me 3 days, and come again to me." And the people departed. So he said, "Look." He said, "I don't have an answer right now." Sometimes, a lot of times, people push you for an answer, like I got to know. And if you don't know, it's not good to give them an answer, because you don't know. He hadn't prayed about it. He hadn't talked to God about it. Maybe this was a surprise to him. It should not have been a surprise to him, because Solomon was aware of what Ahijah had said, and he was aware that Jeroboam was to get those 10, and he was aware that when his son took over, that was when God said it was going to happen. So I would have thought that Solomon would have prepared Rehoboam and said, "Hey, whenever I pass away, God said this is going to happen, and you need to deal with this wisely." But it doesn't appear like he was prepared for this. So he said, "Hey, give me 3 days. Give me 3 days." And so in verse number 6, he does something intelligent. It says, "And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do you advise that I may answer this people?" Now, I will say that Rehoboam was not a young man here. A lot of times some of the kings in Judah were very young, but he was even though he consulted the old men that were with his father, and he's going to consult the younger men that were with him, but he's 40 years old right here. He is 40 years old, so by no means a young man, in his prime, and 40 years old. But anyway, so he consults with the old men that stood before Solomon his father. So Solomon had these counselors, and again, like I said, Solomon was the wisest. He was the wisest man that ever lived. Why, did he really need those counselors? But he had those men that he could talk to and bounce these ideas off of, and so he consults the old men. And he says, "Hey, how do you advise that I may answer the people? Just give me some advice. Give me some sound wisdom. Here, how would my father have dealt with this situation? Explain to me how my father would have dealt with this situation. Would he, what would my father have said? And so they tell him, and they spake unto him, saying, if thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them and answer them and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. And so it's also in 2 Chronicles, I believe, chapter number 10, and he said in 2 Chronicles 10, verse number 7, they spake unto him, saying, if thou be kind to this people, and please them, and speak good words to them, then will they be thy servants forever. So these old men said, hey, look, you ask us. A lot of times people will ask what they don't really want to know, and I feel almost like that's what Rehoboam said. It's like, hey, I want you to give me your advice. And you realize, like, they've already made up their mind. They don't really want your advice, and they just wanted you, as long as you are agreeing with them and what they want to do, then it's good advice. But if you give any kind of advice or counsel that's against what they're already thinking or feeling, they're like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard in all my life. That's ridiculous. And so I almost feel like Rehoboam did those men a service by saying, hey, tell me what my father would have said. But when he heard it, he's like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think I'm going to do that at all. It says, and verse number 8, it says, but he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. So, again, it almost appears like Solomon only had the one son, which was Rehoboam, and so it was understood. It was understood that when Solomon passed away, Rehoboam was going to be king. And so, you know how it is, like people hang on, they gravitate, they latch on to people with power and wealth and influence. They try to become part of that crowd or that clique, or they try and get pulled in with them, and they can enjoy some of the spoils of that. And so it almost looks to me like Rehoboam had his crowd. These are the boys that he grew up with. These are the boys that he grew up around. These are the boys that they got into trouble with. These are the boys that he was comfortable with. But these boys didn't have any brains. I called young boys several weeks ago skulls full of mush, and I was not trying to offend anyone, because I at one point was that, Frankie. I at one point was that. When I talk to Bub, sometimes I'm like, Bub, listen, we've been there. I've been there. I've done the same things you are doing. But when I became a man, I put away childish things, and I need you, if you want to identify as a man, I need you to put away some of them childish things. And so we had that conversation, and I'm like, hey, there was a time when I did the things you're doing, but I don't do them anymore, because I've grown up and I've matured, and I want you to do that. And so here is Rehoboam, and he's consulting skulls full of mush. He's consulting a bunch of guys that they sat around and said, I'll tell you what, Rehoboam, one of these days, whenever you're king, we're going to do some things. We're going to do some things. We're going to make some changes. And the funny thing is how God had blessed David, and God had blessed Solomon, and God had blessed Solomon all the way up to the point where he started serving those other gods when his wives took his heart away from God, and he started building those temples to those other gods and building those shrines to those other gods. And up to that point, Solomon had a perfectly pleasant and peaceful and wonderful kingdom. And yet these boys sat around and said, I tell you what, Rehoboam, when you get in charge, we're going to make some changes. We're going to do some things. Well, the shame of it is, the only changes that should have said, hey, all these little G gods that my father has built shrines to and temples to and houses for, we're going to destroy those. We're going to destroy those. Those are going to go away. Those are going to be gone. Those are going to be destroyed. And we're going to go back to serving the God of Israel. That's what should have happened. But instead, he counsels the young man, and look at their counsel. And the young man that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thou shalt say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. He said, You think the yoke was heavy before? You ain't seen nothing yet. You think the yoke was heavy before? He said, my little finger is going to be thicker than my father's loins. He said, it's not going to get easier on you. It's going to get so much worse. He said, and now whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. He said, I'm not lightening your load. I'm not taking it off of you. I'm not making it easier. I'm going to make it heavier. You know, sometimes you see people at work and they just get overwhelmed. Sometimes they've taken too much on themselves. Sometimes they just have too much on them. And they come to the boss and they're like, hey, listen, I'm really struggling right here. I'm struggling right here. And sometimes it's just because they're lazy. Sometimes it's because they're not a good worker. But sometimes it's not that way. Sometimes it really is because they just have too much on them. They've taken too much on them. Some people don't know how to delegate. So because they don't know how to delegate, they just try to do everything themselves and take it all on themselves, and they just get overwhelmed. And so, but here, this is not the case. He said, I'm not gonna take away from your yoke. He said, I'm gonna add to your yoke. That'd be like a boss saying, oh, you think you've got too much on you now? You wait till next week. Kind of similar to when the children of Israel, not only did they have to make the bricks, next thing you know, you're not just making the bricks, you're having to go get the materials to make the bricks, and I'm gonna make you make the same amount of bricks. You gotta make the same amount of bricks as you did before. That's kind of what he said. He said, you thought it was hard before, it's about to get a lot harder. He said, my father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Now, this is in reference to, again, a whip. We understand what a whip is. The scorpion is similar to what they, when they scourged Jesus with. It's also a whip, but it's got multiple strands on it, and they put metal in that thing so that when they whipped them with that, every time they whipped them, it took out flesh. He said, my father chastised you with whips. He said, I'm going to make it so much worse. Everything he said was make it so much worse. I'm just going to tell you, we just went through election. We just went through election here, and can you imagine if Dakota was running for school board and it's unfortunate he didn't win, but again, you understand, if Dakota was running for school board and he went out and said, I tell you what, boys, you think school was hard before, I'm gonna make your life in school so miserable, no one's gonna vote for him. I'm gonna make your life so miserable, you're gonna hate school every day you get up. Like what we're bringing back corporal punishment. There's gonna be whips, and there's not just gonna be whips, there's gonna be scorpions, there's gonna be whips that are gonna pull flesh whenever you get whipped. When I don't feel like I'm that old, but anyway, they still paddled when I went to school. They still paddled when I went to school. I never got one, probably deserved one a few times, but they still paddled when I went to school. And so, but you can imagine now, if someone announced for school board that they're going to bring back paddling. I mean, can you imagine the drama? Can you imagine the drama that would be if you're like, hey, like if your kid gets out of line, principal's going to paddle them. Like I'm sure Brother Wayne and Brother Tyrone and them, did they paddle when y'all was in school? Yeah, and preacher talks about it. Like I said, if you're running for school board now, he said, I tell you, we're bringing back corporal punishment. We're going to paddle your kids. Like they already have a lawyer. You'd already be sued, and you hadn't even got in yet. They'd be suing you because of what you're going to do to their children. And so he said, I'm going to chastise you with scorpions. So in verse number 12, so Jeroboam and all the people came. 3 days later, they come back to Rehoboam the third day, as the king had appointed, saying, come to me again the third day. And the king answered people roughly. Remember what he's trying to do here. He's trying to get these 10 kingdoms to not go away from him. He's trying to get these 10 kingdoms to stay with him. But not one time do you see where he consulted God. Not one time do you see where he went and found a prophet. Not one time do you see where he consulted God. He consulted old men, he consulted young men, and he made the decision on his own, and not one time did he talk to God. And so he speaks to them roughly. And forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, and I will add your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, that he might perform his saying which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So again, like I said, the king, the Rehoboam was in the will of God. He was in the will of God because God's will was to take those 10 tribes from him because he was punishing basically Solomon. It was Solomon's fault. Because of what Solomon had done, he was punishing him. And so even though Rehoboam should have took better counsel, and I question, as I read this and I studied on this, I question the fact how that God would allow sometimes some of the most wicked men in the Bible, like Ahaz and Manasseh. God allowed them to repent, and God changed his mind, or at least stopped sometimes the punishment, which we know that Manasseh eventually that they went into captivity because of what Manasseh done, but not while Manasseh was there. But sometimes I wonder, what if Rehoboam had taken the heart of David and said, God, I want to follow you with all my heart and all my soul and all my might. And God, I only want to serve you. And I'm sorry that my father let these things come into the kingdom. And I'm sorry that my father let his wives turn his heart away from you. But I don't want that to be my heart. And I want to be the king of Judah. I want to be a king of Judah just like my grandfather David was. Now, again, all I can do is speculate and wonder, but had he went to God with that attitude, that humble attitude, and that humble heart, and repented and turned fully to follow the Lord, I wonder what God could have done or would have done. But that's not what he did. And so in verse number 16, it says, so when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel, now see to thine own house. So David departed, so Israel departed unto their tents. In verse number 17, but as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. So what's going to happen here is now the king Rehoboam is now like, well, we're fixing to go to war. We're about to go to war. We're going to go to war. We're going to go and we're going to fight against Jeroboam. We're going to fight against the 10 tribes that revolted. We're going to go and we're going to fight against them. And he basically calls up 180,000 men that are going to go fight. Verse number 21 says, and when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen men, which were warriors to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. I did skip something right there. So after Rehoboam does this, he gets this bright idea. He's already told him, I'm going to chastise you with whips. He already said, I'm going to put more of a yoke on you. He gets this bright idea when they said, okay, fine, we have no part in you. He decides to send the tax collector down. He decides to send the tax collector down and say, hey, y'all need to pay your taxes. And Israel says, we're going to show you how we're going to pay our taxes. And they take stones and they stone the tax collector. And Rehoboam says, oh, these boys are serious. Skip that part, excuse me. And so in verse number 22 it says, but the word of God came unto Shemaiah, the man of God. Now, again, like I said earlier, there was a man of God. And that's one of the things that I want us to see right here, is there was a man of God available. There was a man of God who was there to help Brother Dakota. There was a man of God that Rehoboam could have went to, but chose not to. And how many times in our own life are we in trouble because, number one, we've forsaken the house of God, number two, we've forsaken the man of God. We've turned our back on the man of God, and we've turned to someone else that we said, well, this guy, he's pretty smart. He'll give me some good counsel. Or, hey, these are my buddies. These are my buddies. These are the guys that I grew up with, and they're gonna give me good counsel. They're gonna tell me, no, they're gonna tell you what you want to hear. And the Proverbs talks about that. The Bible says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. What does that mean? That means a friend is not always going to tell you what you want to hear. He's going to tell you what you need to hear. He's going to look at you and say, hey, I don't like the direction you're heading. Hey, I don't like the direction you're going. Hey, I don't like your attitude right now. Hey, I'm worried about your attitude towards the church. I'm worried about your attitude towards the preacher. I'm worried that you're starting to let some things slip. I'm worried that you're starting to let some things in. I'm concerned about you. That's a real friend. But a friend that just goes along with whatever you're doing, that's not a real friend. And just like the Bible talks about how it says that Amnon had a friend, was Jonadab really Amnon's friend? That answer obviously proves out to be no. It proves no, because as soon as Amnon does what he does, Jonadab doesn't want to have anything to do with him. And then whenever it's been decreed that Absalom is going to kill Amnon, it's Jonadab that tells the king. He said, listen, don't be worried about it, king. All your sons are not dead, just Amnon, because it's been decreed from the time that he forced Tamar that he was going to. It was Jonadab, supposedly the friend of Amnon. That was the friend that told the king. He said, hey, don't worry about a thing. It's just Amnon. I don't want friends like that. I don't want friends like that are ready to throw me over in a moment's notice. I don't want friends like that. I want a friend that's going to be with me through thick and thin, but I want a friend that's willing to challenge me and say, hey, I don't like where you're at right now. I don't like where you're at. I don't like what you're doing. I don't like where you're going. Again, Joseph, he talked about it in family camp. He said, Brother Dakota went to him and said, Joseph. And that was hard to take. Joseph testified to the fact that was hard to take at the time. He didn't appreciate it at the moment. But now looking back, he's like, actually, Dakota was a real friend that day. He was a real friend that day. Not just someone said, just keep going to the gym, Joe. Just keep looking at yourself in the mirror and admiring yourself and turning yourself and your body and your physique into your idol. Just keep doing that. Instead, Dakota's like, hey, you need to watch what you're doing right there. And so Rehoboam had a man of God that he chose not to use. We're also going to see that Jeroboam had a man of God, Ahijah, that he chose not to use. Ahijah had come to him, told him he was going to be king, and we're going to see later that Ahijah's still around. When Jeroboam's son gets sick, guess who he says go to? He doesn't say go to some of these false priests that he set up. He doesn't say go up to these fake gods that he's going to create. He doesn't say do that. He said I need his wife. He tells his wife, go disguise yourself so you don't look like you're the wife of Jeroboam, and go up to Ahijah and find out about our son. And sometimes it's too late. Sometimes you're like, oh, I need a man of God now. Well, now it's too late. You shouldn't have forsook him in the first place. You shouldn't have went off and run him down and run away from him and had nothing to do with him. Now all of a sudden you're dying of cancer or whatever. And you're like, hey, man of God, come here and pray for me. And they'll come pray for you, but it may be too late. he says in verse 23, he says, speak unto Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and the remnant of the people, saying, thus saith the Lord, ye shall not go up, nor fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. They hearken therefore to the word of the Lord, and return to depart according to the word of the Lord. Now, I will say, again, like I said, I'll give Rehoboam credit where credit's due. There are times where some other kings were told don't go up, and they went up anyway. There were times that some other kings were told don't make an allegiance, and they made an allegiance anyway, and they went up, and it cost them, sometimes it cost a good king his life. Here Rehoboam said, here comes this man of God, and he says, don't go up. And at this time, they were still willing to follow God and said, hey, he said, don't go up, we're not going up. So we get to verse number 25. Verse 25, sorry, that was all introduction. We get to verse number 25. It says, then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein, and went out from thence and built Penuel. So he takes these two cities that had been destroyed previously. They'd been a city and they kind of gotten destroyed, and he built those up, and so he starts his kingdom out doing some good things. He starts his kingdom out and he's doing some good things. He's building up these cities and building up these things. And here's where we go off the rails. It says, and Jeroboam said in his heart. Now, we know that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. We have read that verse and understand that verse. We know that a lot of times what you tell yourself is not true. What you tell yourself is just not true. Just a quick example. Last night I was sitting in the recliner. I'm like, hey, I want a glass of tea. So my daughter, she gets me a glass of tea, and she brings it to me. Well, I knew that it had just been made just very, very shortly before that. And so even though it was in the refrigerator, Chris, it was still going to be warm. And I don't like warm tea. Lukewarm tea. I don't like it. I like it cold. Tea is supposed to have ice on it. Iced tea. So she brought it to me. She handed it to me. And she said, it's been in the refrigerator. But I felt the glass. And the glass, I'm like, no, this is warm. So I'm like, hey, can you bring me some ice? So she's like, but it was in the refrigerator. I'm like, yeah, but it's not cold enough. Just bring me some ice. So she brought me some ice. She said, are you mad at me? I'm not mad at you. Why would I be mad at you? I'm not mad. I'm not mad, and I'm not mad at you. Neither one. But she felt in her heart that I must have been mad because she didn't do it right the first time. And I wasn't mad at all. I just wanted ice. I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I just want ice. I'm not mad at all. Just bring me my ice, and then I'll be happy. And so, but she said in her heart. And I'll guarantee if I went around to every man, if I went around to every man in here and said, hey, tell me about a time where your wife was like, are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong? Did I do something? And the answer would be, no, I'm not mad. Sometimes the answer is bad. Sometimes the answer is yes. But there's a reason. But a lot of times they just feel like there's something wrong. I just feel like something's not right. I just feel like. And so here is Jeroboam, and he said in his heart, like, again, I listen to one guy, and he talks about pictures and words, and I actually think it's one of the best pieces of secular advice I've ever heard of picture and words, is because we speak in words, but we think in pictures. So if I tell my wife, hey, let's have a nice supper tonight, in my mind, she might be making hamburger steak and mashed potatoes and gravy and green beans and this. In her mind, we're going to Longhorn. Because I have a picture of what I think a good supper is, and she has a picture of what her good supper is, and they may not be the same, Chris, but the words are the same. And so, if you want to get along, this is marriage 101 for any of you guys who are married or going to get married. If you learn to describe the picture, hey, I'd really like a good supper tonight. I tell you what, that hamburger steak that you make is so good with mashed potatoes and gravy. There's no question, Joe, that we're not going Longhorn. There's no question. It's not even a question. But if all I do is say, hey, we're having a good supper tonight, we have two different visions of what a good supper is. Her good supper is I don't have to cook and I don't have to clean up after I get done cooking. But my good supper is I don't have to pay for it because I've already paid for the groceries. And all I got to do is sit down in my house and it's ready when I walk in the door. And all I got to do is put salt and pepper to taste. That's all I got to do. That's my vision. And so you say these things in your heart like, hey, he must be mad at me. He must be this. He must be that. And if you don't ever find out whether it's true or not, you may go along for 3 days thinking he's mad at you. And he's like, why is she acting weird? Why is she acting so weird? Because she felt in her heart that he was mad at her. So he says in his heart, he's like, hey, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. Where did that come from? It didn't come from God. It didn't come from Ahijah. It didn't even come from the people, Riley. Because the people were like, hey, it didn't even come from Rehoboam. Rehoboam didn't go around and say, hey, boys, I made a mistake. I made this huge mistake, and remember what I said about chastising you with scorpions, and remember what I said about making your yoke heavy, and remember what I said about my father's loins versus my little finger? Yeah, I was having a bad day that day. I was having a really bad day that day, and honestly, guys, none of that stuff was true. Actually, I do want to make your yoke lighter, and I do want to make your burden less, and I do want those things. Rehoboam never did that. Never did that. And so he never did that. And so where did this come from? He said it in his heart. Where did it come from? It didn't come from God. It didn't come from the prophet. It came from his heart. And every one of us needs to be careful when we tell ourselves something. And you better find out whether it's true. Because a lot of times we act or react on things. Have you ever had an argument with someone, and you don't have to raise your hand or acknowledge it. Have you ever had an argument with someone just in your mind? Like you say what they're going to say, and then you repeat back what like you're like, oh yeah, and you have this whole argument. And maybe I'm the only one that's ever done that before, but you're like, oh yeah, well if he says this, I'm going to say this. And if she says this, then I'm going to say that. And you have this whole argument. And then you find out, like, they weren't even thinking that. They never were thinking that. They never were mad. They never did feel that way. They never did have any of those feelings. It was just the devil had got inside your mind and convinced you that that's how they felt, and then you went off on this tangent because you thought they must be mad at me. And that's what happened to Jeroboam. He's like, hey, he said, I'm going to have to do something. If I don't do something, they're going to leave. They're going to go up to Jerusalem, and they're going to start worshiping Jerusalem, and then they're going to go back to their Lord Rehoboam. He said, verse 27, if this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they shall kill me and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Where did that come from? But because of what he said in his heart, he goes on to make a decision that for the next 253 years, at least 14 times in the Bible, it talks about how another king followed after the sins of Jeroboam. For the next 253 years, what he is about to do, they're going to take, and they're never going to get away from it. We understand that once the kingdom split, they had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, which was Judah and part of Benjamin. And so we understand that Judah would have a good king, then they'd have a bad king. They'd have a good king, and they'd have a bad king. And sometimes a good king, and then a bad king, sometimes the other way. But Israel, the northern kingdom, never had a good king. There were multiple families. There were multiple families. Like Jeroboam only had 2 reign, and then Baasha comes in, and he only has 1 or 2 reign, and then someone else comes in and wipes them out. But not one single person moved away from the sin of Jeroboam. All because he said something in his heart. I guarantee if you went to every person who's ever been in Concord Baptist Church, and every person who's ever left Concord Baptist Church, and you said, hey, tell me why'd you leave? If they told you the truth, most of the time they don't. You know, they'll spiritualize it. They'll come up with this big spiritual reason and everything. But tell me, why did you leave? And sometimes it's like, well, so-and-so didn't talk to me anymore. Excuse me? So-and-so didn't shake my hand. Okay. Actually, I told Luke the other day, I said, Luke, he's sitting upstairs because of his sickness that he's been dealing with. He's been sitting upstairs with me. I said, Luke, I'll be honest with you. I said, if you're introverted, this is whenever Brother Randy says, everyone kind of shake your neighbor's hand or whatever, like that's the place to be if you're introverted. Because nobody comes up and shakes our hand. Nobody comes up and shakes our hand. And we can just sit and look down, look at the people, but nobody comes up and shakes our hand. If you're introverted, like that's the place to be is upstairs. Me, Luke, Hagen, and Samuel. Upstairs. No one comes shakes our hand. And honestly, half the time we don't even shake each other's hands even though we're just a few feet apart. We just kind of, how you doing? But if you're the type of person that gets your feelings hurt, you're like, I can't believe no one ever just makes the effort to come shake my hand. But the problem is the reverse is also true, John. Guess what? I never make the effort to walk down the stairs and walk through those doors and shake some people's hands. Because I know we got at least 6, 7, 8 minutes of handshaking that's going on, and all I got to do is pan out the camera. No one's talking anyway, so I don't need to run the board. And if I wanted to, I come down, shake every person's hand, still make it back upstairs, and not miss a thing. It's okay, y'all. You don't have to come shake my hand. It doesn't hurt my feelings a bit. But you understand what I'm saying? Like people say in their heart, they're like, this person doesn't shake my hand. This person doesn't do this. This person doesn't do that. And the question is, if you want to have friends, are you friendly? Are you friendly? And I understand there are times where you go to shake someone's hand, they turn around and walk away. I understand that happens too. But I guarantee you, if we went around to every person that ever went to Concord and said, hey, why'd you leave Concord? They go, well, at the time I really felt like so-and-so didn't like me anymore. And it hurt my feelings, and it just built up and built up and built up and built up. Instead of emptying my trash can, I just let my trash can overflow to the point where I said I can't deal with it anymore, so I just went down the street. And most of the time the problem is the person that was the problem was the person that went down the street. The person that was the problem was not the person that was still here. And so he said in his heart, he said, hey, he said, I'm going to have to do something. He said, they're not just going to reject me from being king. They're not just going to go to Rehoboam. They're going to kill me. So he says in verse number 28, he says, whereupon the king took counsel. Took counsel. Now, it's not like it is. It's not as defined as it is whenever Rehoboam took counsel. God doesn't tell us who he took counsel with. All I know is whoever he took counsel with was not very wise counselors. All I know is whoever he took counsel with, well, they were not very wise, Riley. They did not have a lot of wisdom. And I know who he didn't take counsel with, and that was his man of God, and that was Ahijah. At no point does it say Jeroboam went to Ahijah. At no point does it say that he went and sought out a man of God. At no point does it ever say he prayed to God, to Jehovah. He's going to do a lot of stuff to these false gods that he's about to make. But at no point does it say he went. But he took counsel. And there is profit in good counsel. There is profit in getting counsel. But you better find out for sure that person that's counseling you has your best interest in heart, not their best interest. You better be sure that person that's counseling you has been with God themselves and is willing to say, hey, look, I'm gonna pray about this, and I don't want to just say something offhand. I'm gonna pray about this, and what God shows me, I'm gonna tell you, but that decision's still yours to make. It's good counsel. But a lot of times people, they're just willing to give counsel. It says, whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. Now, calves of gold, where have I heard of that before? Exodus chapter, I believe, 32. I got it written down here somewhere. Exodus 32, verse 4 through 8. Children of Israel. But where did they come up with that idea? Oh, I know where they come up with that idea. They come up with that idea in Egypt. That's where they come up, because they worship calves. They worship a bull in Egypt. Let me see, where was Jeroboam before he came back? Oh, he was in Egypt. And he watched those people worship those calves. And when it came time to build his kingdom, he said, we're going to do it like they do it in Egypt. Again, if you were a student of history, if he was a student of history, and had he done what we read last week, where the king was supposed to, remember where I said he's not supposed to multiply wives, not supposed to multiply horses, but not only that, they were supposed to read that word of God. And had he been a student of history, he said, maybe this happened one time before, maybe it's not the greatest idea. Maybe making a golden calf is not the greatest idea in the world. Maybe I shouldn't do that because when Aaron did it, when Moses came off the mountain, 3,000 men were slain because they were worshiping that calf. But he'd been down to Egypt, and he took counsel, and apparently he took counsel with people who'd also been in Egypt. And they said, you know what would be a good idea? Let's make calves. Let's make calves of gold and send them. It is too much for you to go up. And so again, he sold it to them like this was for their benefit. But we know that he said, hey, I've got to do something because I'm going to lose my kingdom if I don't do something. But then he tells him, hey, I'm doing this for you guys. It's not for me. I don't have any, I have no skin in this game, no skin whatsoever. I'm just trying to make it convenient for you to be able to worship. And it was all about him the whole time. He said, behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel and the other put in Dan. Now, I'm trying to finish right here because I'm out of time. But in the kingdom of Israel, again, Dan was all the way at the top. Well, the Danites, they were happy because they'd already been worshiping Micah's image, so they were perfectly willing to worship an image. But in Bethel was directly in line with Jerusalem, and all these people that were coming down, he's like, hey, y'all don't need to go. Don't go to that camp meeting. Don't go to that camp meeting. It's closer to come to my camp meeting. And we got worldly music over here. We got worldly dress standards over here. We got the preachers that don't preach against anything, and they just tell happy stories all the time. We got all these wonderful things over here. Just come down here and worship. Don't waste your time going down there. And so, Lord willing, we'll look at this. We'll look at this next week. But this one sin followed this the 10 tribes until they went into bondage. This sin never went away. Thank you.